Shortly after noon today, Boston said goodbye to one groundbreaking mayor and hello to another.
This new day had been dawning for a while, and so many people have helped to usher it in.
When we connect the power of city government to the force of our neighborhoods and communities, we see how much is possible for our city. We have so much work to do, and it will take all of us to get it done. So let's get to work.
Mayor Michelle Wu is not only the first woman and first person of color elected as Boston's mayor, her two young kids are among a fast-growing group in the region of people who identify as multiracial, as evidenced by a new report out today from the Boston Foundation about the state's large multiracial and multi-ethnic population. Of note, the second and third top vote-getters in the mayoral race, Anissa Sabi-George and Andrea Campbell, are also members of multiracial families. And beyond Boston, multiracial representation in politics in high places has certainly been growing. Most notably Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Barack Obama, also a former resident of Greater Boston, Somerville to be exact. According to the Boston Foundation report, in this region, the multiracial population has more than doubled over the past 2 decades, from around 112,000 to nearly 250,000. And today, 1 in 5 babies born in the state is of mixed race or ethnicity. Joined now by the head of that organization, President and CEO of the Boston Foundation, Lee Pelton. Lee, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you so much.
You know, in the final segment of this report, I want to read to you what knocked my socks off. Census Bureau made multiracial projections for 2060 that were already surpassed in 2020. Assuming that's not a typo, did that surprise you?
Well, it did surprise me. I mean, that's a pretty big miss by the demographers at the census. But I think we all knew and recognized in one way or another that the multiracial population in Boston and Greater Boston and elsewhere was increasing, and not only in urban areas, but also in areas outside of urban settings. And as you said, the multiracial population in Boston increased by 50%, from about 24,000 to 37,000. And in Boston, it increased, Greater Boston, it increased significantly, more than doubled actually, from about 111,000 to 250,000. So it has been significant.
And the multiracial births, this also knocked my socks off, exceed the combined number of the births of Black kids and Latino kids. Why should we care about this demographic shift? Why does it matter?
Well, first of all, I think we've tended to try to place people in one bucket, and this shows just how outdated those efforts are. And in basically every case, the number of people checking white, Black, or Asian on their census form in combination with another race is, get this, growing much faster than the population of people who only check white, Black, or Asian. So our Asian population is growing, our Latinx population is growing, but the population of people who identify as more than one race and ethnicity is growing far faster. And it does matter. You know, it drives our narratives in both positive and negative ways. Some of us, like myself, can celebrate this uniquely American recognition of our diversity, and I do so at a very personal level. But there are others who try to push the narrative of our loss as, white Christian heritage in a way that bolsters racism and xenophobia and so on. And finally, it shapes how we all fit together in ways that are personal and can be really challenging for us as individuals in culture.
Do we fit together better, though, the more multiracial the society gets? I mean, in particular, your report talks about the one-drop rule, which you can describe in a minute. Is there as much racism directed at a Black member of a multiracial couple or the child of a multiracial couple, him or herself, than there is at an individual Black in our society?
Jim, I don't know that. I do know that, and I think it was Pew that did a study about, how, white folks, for instance, are just nationally the approval for what we call mixed marriages. At one point, I believe, and this was not too long ago, I think it was in 1990, that disapproval was in double digits, I think approaching almost 90%.
Really?
But 20 years later, that number was in single digits and was less than 10%. So it suggests that there's a growing, if we were to trust the Pew charitable, their research arm, it suggests there's a growing tolerance, if not growing embrace of interracial marriage and their offspring.
And one drop rule, by the way, for those who don't know, in the southern states during slavery, one drop of, I guess they would say, black blood meant you were black. How does this, Lee Pelton, how does this affect segregation in our city, do you think? I mean, we all know about housing segregation where we live, and then we learned a couple of weeks ago from a report out of Harvard, in fact, the professor did it, Sampson was with me, about how segregated we are also in our daily travels, in our daily movements. Is your sense that this growing multiracial nature and multi-ethnic nature of our community will change that?
Well, I think it will. In fact, I think that when you look at the various categories now, I'll give you an example about how it shapes how we fit together. So if you look at the percentage of people who check only white, Boston is a majority minority city. But if you look at the percentage of folks who checked white alone or in combination with another race, more than half the city checked the white box. So the question is the Black population growing? Is Boston really a majority minority? Mm-hmm. And it raises these complex questions. And actually, I for one, personally welcome the complexity of these questions and the answers and how we see each other, because I think that really gets to the heart of, who we are and our common humanity.
I want to return to what you said a minute ago, Lee, about the fear and anger this provokes in some people. I think the most recent estimate I've seen is the white population in this country will be a minority sometime in the 2040s, if the social scientists are right. And in a country where 70 plus million people embraced a guy who was a nativist, a birtherist, a racist, how do you conquer that fear in the face of these growing numbers?
Well, I'm not sure, I'm not sure if one can, I'm not sure how successful we'll be at that. Jim Crowism was an attempt to separate poor whites from poor blacks after Reconstruction. And it worked. And it allowed white people to say, well, I may be poor, but at least I ain't black. And since then, we've used this divisional trope or some to success, and Donald Trump used it really wonderfully. He used it in a way that would divide working class black people from working class white people. And so you would have to ask your question, I asked this question, what compelling myth, or what myth would compel a person, or that a person would vote for a president who's going to tell you that he's going to take away your health care? I mean, that's how powerful this divisional myth is, because there are many white Americans who voted and still support Donald Trump. But many of his policies are not in their best interests. So that fear, as I tell my kids, fear and ignorance are it's a toxic, it's a toxic drink.
Lee, you co-wrote an op-ed, I think it was in September. In part, you said that Boston continues to be a tale of two cities. Are you more hopeful about it ultimately being one city after the swearing in today of the first person of color to ever lead the city?
Well, I know Michelle well, and she ran a great campaign, and she's been running it for several years. And she's going to be a magnificent mayor. But there is no single elected official who can, when they take office, solve all of the issues that confront us. And so there are a number of very, weighty, complex social, economic, ethnic, and racial issues that need to be addressed. And so history will be the arbiter of how this administration addresses those issues. We can't address them today, but we can be, as I am, hopeful for her, her new position.
Here's hoping that history moves quickly. Lee Pelton, congratulations on the report, and thanks so much for spending time with me.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Great to see you.